The story begins with a middle-aged man stabbing his sword into the head of a massive, lifeless dragon. A system message flashed before him. Congratulations, you have cleared the dungeon, ancient dragon's nest. He remained silent for a moment before shouting in frustration, questioning aloud why he was working so hard when he was nearly 60. That man was Shin Sanghyun, a 55-year-old swordsman, and the protagonist of this story. Sanghyun began narrating his journey in his mind. He had been living as a swordsman for 30 years, yet his greatest achievement had only been making it into the top 100 of his country. In a world full of awakened beings, that meant he was nothing more than a speck of dust, a needle in a haystack. As he glanced over to the reward he received this time, he saw a skill book. Observing it closely, he muttered to himself with curiosity, wondering whether it was edible, just like the artifacts he had consumed before. Just then a system message appeared. Constellation late bloomer model student has entered. A portal opened, and from it stepped a man wearing glasses. Another message followed. Late bloomer sincerely blesses you for your hard work. Additionally, he compliments your impeccable final strike. Sanghyun thought to himself that the man entering so dramatically was none other than his contracted constellation. Late bloomer. He gave a slight smile of gratitude toward him. He thought, by seeing late bloomer, I am grateful to him for contracting with me, even though I'm just a third-rate swordsman. Then late bloomer informed him once a player reaches level 850, all artifact and title stats would be doubled, and at level 900 all stats would be tripled. Sanghyun, whose current level was only 650, glared at him. In his thoughts, he admitted that due to the absurd requirements, he had yet to gain anything from his connection with late bloomer. Late bloomer then suggested that Sanghyun eat the skill book. As Sanghyun reached for it, he smiled creepily and muttered internally that he was going to eat it now. It was the only skill he had acquired during his awakening. It was devour artifacts. He recalled how to understand his ability. He had tried boiling artifacts, frying them, and consuming them in various ways, yet felt no different. By the time he realized that synchronizing mana with an artifact of a suitable rank activated his devour artifacts skill, 30 years had already passed, while others grew stronger immediately after awakening. He had wasted decades in blind experimentation. He gazed at the skill book and asked aloud if it should have some kind of instruction manual, then threw it aside in frustration. Late bloomer apologized for the lack of information and encouraged him to try mana synchronization once more, suggesting that there was still plenty of time. Sanghyun's face turned dark at those words. Turning to him, he snapped, asking who said, I had a lot of time left. I am nearly 60. If I had a child at 30, that child would be almost 30 now. If I had one earlier, I might have already had grandchildren. Looking at late bloomer, Sanghyun thought that perhaps the constellation couldn't understand, because humans die early. Late bloomer sincerely apologized if he had said something insensitive, but Sanghyun reassured him it wasn't his fault. His life had simply become filled with regret. There was someone from his past he couldn't forget, someone he tried to become like, but now he was just tired, too old. If only he had been a little younger. After a moment of silence, Sanghyun declared his intention to retire. He thought internally, I was planning to cancel their contract so late bloomer could find another player. In response, late bloomer opened a mysterious portal beneath Sanghyun's feet. As it pulled him in, Sanghyun called out for help, but late bloomer remained silent. As he was dragged into the portal, Sanghyun thought to himself, this scene you're witnessing right now was my last memory as a 55-year-old. A system message then appeared. Late bloomer, utilize the essence you've experimented with. Just like that, Sanghyun had regressed in time. In a completely different place, a man named Park Jongmin, a reporter also known as Player G, was speaking on a televised program. He explained that dungeons and gates were environments created for awakened people, also known as players. Sitting beside him was the beautiful Han Hyunjong, CEO of Hyunjong Corporation. She added that dungeons could be considered stepping stones for players, while gates led to other dimensions, mysterious, unexplored regions that players must venture into. This broadcast was being watched by a young man holding an old dagger. He was Sanghyun at the age of 25. As he swiped the blade, he muttered internally that he had really regressed. His expression was sharp, serious. He now had full awareness of his situation. For days had already passed since his return, to be precise. He had gone back 30 years. He had lost consciousness after falling into the portal, and when he woke up, he found himself not in his 55-year-old body, but in his 25-year-old self inside his old studio apartment. All of his memories remained intact. He reasoned that the regression must have been the miracle of the constellation. There could be no other explanation. As he held the dagger tightly, he admitted he was still confused, but regardless, he had no time to waste. He needed to act. A system message popped up displaying information. Venomoth's dagger, bronze artifact, one-handed weapon, attack power 17, effect agility plus 10, self-defense weapon does not blunt easily. Sanghyun recognized it. This bronze-tier dagger was one he had luckily acquired during this time period. Though low in rank, he knew it contained a hidden skill. He activated his Devour artifact skill. The system calculated the absorption rate of the artifact's basic stats, 10% for bronze tier. Due to previous usage, a bonus was applied, increasing the final absorption to 20%. Sanghyun acknowledged that since he hadn't used it much, the rate was low, but what mattered most was the hidden skill. Then came another message: mana synchronization with Venomoth's dagger has begun. Sanghyun entered the gap of unconsciousness, a space he had to pass through in order to devour artifacts. He confessed to feeling nervous every time he arrived there. He never knew what kind of dish would appear. A dish formed before him. Preparation to absorb Venomoth's dagger is complete. It was rotisserie barbecue chicken drizzled with olive oil. Relieved, Sanghyun was glad it wasn't something revolting, like a humid swamp centipede dish. He happily consumed it, thinking he could eat meals like that any time. The system then updated: absorption of Venomoth's dagger has begun. You have permanently acquired agility plus 2. Hidden skill acquired, Demon Bash. Venomoth's dagger has been fully absorbed and will now disappear forever. Returning to his room, Sanghyun lamented the loss of the dagger, but smiled faintly. He had successfully obtained a useful skill as planned. It was time to move forward. Meanwhile, at a different location, a group of people gathered before dungeon number 85, led by Yoon Dae-kyung. A man rushed over to him. He was the porter group leader. He informed Dae-kyung that one of his team members had dropped out. The man, a newcomer who had joined 4 days ago, was named Sanghyun. Dae-kyung replied confidently that Sanghyun would be joining the player team, not the porter team. The porter was stunned. He argued that Sanghyun had just awakened and hadn't even completed player academy. Assigning him to the player team was unprecedented. Dae-kyung sighed, then stepped forward with an intimidating presence. He reminded the porter that he managed the party, the contribution system, and everything else. The porter, visibly shaken, apologized and walked away. As he left, Dae-kyung muttered to a nearby player that porters always talk too much if given a chance. The nearby player asked why Dae-kyung accepted Sanghyun in the first place. Dae-kyung replied with a smirk that if anyone was going to die, it would be Sanghyun, not them. Letting him die would shut the porters up and preserve the value of the player team. At that moment, Sanghyun arrived, introduced himself, and declared that he would be working as a player from that day onward. The group stared at him with aggression. Dae-kyung and his companion, however, smiled maliciously. Sanghyun noted how expressive everyone was, so much so that they didn't even bother hiding their hostility. Dae-kyung stepped forward and welcomed him. He commented on Sanghyun's weapon, a longsword, then asked about it. Sanghyun awkwardly explained that he had studied videos on YouTube. Dae-kyung remarked that the longsword was one of the hardest swords to wield. Sanghyun, however, assured him he would do his best to protect himself and asked for his trust. Grabbing his shoulder with a fierce smile, Dae-kyung commended his spirit, declaring that all men needed that kind of courage. He then rallied the group. Let's go wild. They entered the dungeon. As Sanghyun passed through the portal, Dae-kyung scoffed internally. He found the idea of YouTube training absurd. Did Sanghyun really think dungeons were so simple? He considered Sanghyun arrogant for thinking he could survive just because he awakened, but Dae-kyung smirked. This orc dungeon, known as the Wailing Wall for newbies, would teach him a lesson. He was sure the idiot would soon know his place. However, after some time inside the dungeon, Dae-kyung was both terrified and stunned. He looked at the carnage before him. The corpses of orcs littered the ground. At the center stood Sanghyun, his eyes glowing, his body emanating an intense aura. Dae-kyung could only stare and wonder, who the hell is he? What did I just witness? Coming to the present, Sanghyun thought about the dungeon he had entered. Orcs, monsters that mostly appear in games, novels, and fantasy movies, were so familiar to people that they naturally carried prejudices against them. Everyone assumed orcs were weak. Compared to other monsters like dragons, they certainly were stupid, violent, and brutish. Because of this assumption, many new players, overconfident in themselves, often jumped into fights with orcs without much thought. However, orcs had traits that made them far more dangerous than they appeared. On average, they were 250 centimeters tall and weighed 180 kilograms. This physical advantage created an overwhelming power gap against humans. For this reason, they were often referred to as the Wall of Lament. As the party walked through the dungeon, a black-haired guy from the team, walking in front of Sanghyun, looked over his shoulder and warned him that he wouldn't receive any special treatment just for being a newbie. He would be on his own. Another member murmured something under his breath while glancing at Sanghyun, implying mockingly that he was already acting like a player just because he had awakened. Sanghyun awkwardly responded that he would try his hardest while thinking to himself that no one seemed nice to newbies. The black-haired guy retorted coldly, telling him not to just do his best, but to actually perform well. Sanghyun went quiet and then asked if he could take the front line when they encountered a monster. The man looked at him in disbelief, asking if he had lost his mind. Just then, an orc wielding an axe suddenly appeared from behind. Both the black-haired guy and Sanghyun were startled. Sanghyun, surprised but determined, recognized this moment as his first battle since regressing. He drew his sword and declared that he would take care of it. But before he could make a move, the black-haired guy blocked the orc's strike with his shield. The orc's strength was overwhelming, and the man struggled to hold it back. Frustrated, he shouted at Sanghyun, questioning how someone who moved so slowly expected to use a greatsword effectively. Sanghyun calmly replied that he didn't need any help. The man, still straining against the orc's blow, snapped back, telling Sanghyun to stop talking and prove himself. Sanghyun warned him to look forward, but as he tried to block the orc's next blow, panic began to set in. At that moment, Daekyung entered the scene, intervening just in time to block the attack and hurl the orc away. Daekyung scolded them both, asking if they thought this was some kind of picnic. The black-haired guy quickly apologized. Daekyung ordered everyone to stay back, declaring that he would handle the orc himself. The orc, now rising from the ground again, charged toward Daekyung, who met it head-on and stabbed it in the chest. Everyone began to cheer at his apparent victory. However, before they could react further, the orc stood back up, its eyes glowing, and raised its axe. Daekyung barely dodged the incoming blow, which slammed violently into the ground. Sanghyun stood still, analyzing the situation. He thought about how Daekyung was supposedly the highest level player in their group. Yet even he was only level 50 and couldn't land a critical hit. As Daekyung rushed forward and stabbed the orc again, it finally collapsed. The others looked on in awe, surprised that Daekyung had killed the orc on his own. Daekyung turned and told the group it was nothing, then asked if everyone was all right. The group nodded in agreement. Just as he was about to say something more, the sound of more orcs echoed through the dungeon. Looking up, they saw a group of heavily armored orcs approaching. Everyone was shocked. These orcs were larger and more dangerous. They turned to Daekyung, asking what to do. He looked worried and advised them to fall back for the team's safety. Internally, he thought he could barely handle one orc. Facing a group would be impossible, Sanghyun then asked if he could try. Daekyung and the black-haired guy both turned to him, stunned by the question. The rest of the team grew frustrated with him. Daekyung, trying to calm him, reminded him that although he might be excited after awakening, this wasn't the time. But before he could finish, Sanghyun rushed forward toward the orcs. Daekyung shouted after him, warning he'd get himself killed. To everyone's shock, Sanghyun swiftly killed one of the orcs, slicing it cleanly in two. A system message appeared. Level 1 skill: devour artifacts. Consumed artifacts 1 HP, 200 MP, 20 EXP, 40. The remaining orcs turned and charged at him. Holding his sword tightly, Sanghyun muttered that even though he was low level, he had plenty of experience. He cut them down, effortlessly dodging their attacks with precision. As he fought, he recalled how many orcs he had killed in his past life. The group stood frozen, watching. The black-haired guy asked his teammate if that was really Sanghyun. The teammate replied that Sanghyun might actually defeat all of the orcs. And he wasn't even joking. Sanghyun raised his sword against the armored orc as it charged. Their weapons clashed, and although Sanghyun made several cuts, the orc's thick skin resisted them. Daekyung shouted that its skin was too tough. His attacks weren't working. Suddenly, the orc became stunned. A system message popped up. Skill used: Demon Bash effect hinders a target monster or human for 2 seconds. Note success rate and duration depend on the target's skill resistance. Sanghyun laughed and finished the orc off. The group around him murmured in disbelief. One muttered that Sanghyun had only awakened 3 days ago, and yet he used a hindrance skill. Another pointed out that it wasn't even a short hindrance. Many named players barely managed 1.5 seconds. Others questioned how he was so skilled with a greatsword and joked about asking which YouTube videos he watched. Daekyung, shocked, wondered where Sanghyun had even acquired such a skill. A new system message appeared. You have leveled up. You have fulfilled the condition for a title. You have been awarded Frank title, Fearless Immature Puppy, +5 evasion points, and used bonus stat points 1. Sanghyun didn't care much about the level up, but found the title unexpected. He thought to himself that he already knew which stat he'd invest in, something he learned too late in his past life. He chose luck, noting that it affected both skill hit rates and artifact drop rates, which were crucial for him. A new message displayed: players' luck has increased. Daekyung approached him with a startled expression, asking if he was really Sanghyun. He questioned the skill he had just used, hindrance, and wanted to know where he got it. Sanghyun, thinking silently about his regression and how he was now using his skills wisely, awkwardly replied that he got it when he awakened. Daekyung didn't believe it and asked again if he was being honest. He wondered if Sanghyun had gotten extremely lucky and obtained a diamond rank artifact or something even rarer. Sanghyun offered his sword to Daekyung, suggesting he check it himself. Daekyung examined the sword and realized it was just a regular greatsword with 50 attack power. He was shocked. That meant the skill really was Sanghyun's own. Frustrated, Daekyung thought about how he had been running dungeons for 2 years and still didn't have a skill that effective. Even at level 50, he also started thinking about how today's pay shares would be distributed. Just then, another teammate called out to Daekyung, informing him that the middle boss had appeared. Agitated, Daekyung told the team they were moving out. Turning to Sanghyun, he admitted that clearing the minions had been easier thanks to him, but warned him not to get ahead of himself. That fancy skill wouldn't do much against the demon orc they were about to face. Sanghyun stayed silent. Daekyung continued, reminding him not to overstep. The demon orc would be a whole different challenge. Sanghyun thought to himself about why he had returned to this exact party right after regressing. He called out to Daekyung, who turned around and asked if Sanghyun was scared. But before he could finish speaking, Sanghyun interrupted, asking if he could claim the artifact if he killed the demon orc alone. Daekyung stared at him in surprise. Sanghyun reminded himself silently. This party paid based on performance. He thought about the Crimson Stone, an artifact that could only be obtained by defeating demon orcs. That being said, even after slaying hundreds of them, it was still considered nearly impossible to acquire. The drop rate was exceedingly low. In his past life, after his team failed to defeat a demon orc, they were fortunate enough to witness the Crimson Stone, which another team had managed to obtain. He remembered it vividly. The other team stood nearby, speaking amongst themselves. One of them, eyeing the manager holding the Crimson Stone, asked how he had gotten his hands on it. Another remarked with a smirk that it would fetch a good price on the market, adding that it was one of the few artifacts known to possess the rare delay skill. Hearing that, Sanghyun had locked that memory deep in his mind. Now in the present, he thought that delay skill is exactly what I need right now. At that moment, as Sanghyun uttered something about killing the middle boss, everyone turned to stare at him in shock. He looked at Daekyung and asked, if my memory serves me right, doesn't this party distribute rewards based on contribution? Then calmly, but firmly, he added, if I defeat the monster myself, there shouldn't be any issues, right? Daekyung said nothing in response. Sanghyun, with a worried expression, thought to himself that it was essential to obtain the delay skill for what lay ahead. However, he also knew how others would perceive him. A cocky newbie trying to show off. Just then, 2 men, one with black hair and the other with brown, stepped forward wearing twisted smiles. They looked at Sanghyun with disdain. One of them sneered and asked who he thought he was. The other spat bitterly, asking if he really believed he was something special just because he had managed to kill a few orcs. Daekyung remained silent, listening to the exchange. Eventually, he intervened, telling the others to calm down, and then addressing Sanghyun, do as you please. But he added, pointing a finger at him with a threatening glare, that's only if we fail to defeat the boss. Only then can you enter the dungeon on your own and finish it yourself. Got it? Sanghyun smiled at the ultimatum. That's easier than I thought, he mused. I guess that means I'll be stepping out of this battle, he said. Daekyung turned and began walking toward the middle boss room. Do as you please, he muttered, and the rest of the team followed after him. But his face darkened as he recalled Sanghyun's words. That cocky bastard, acting like he's something special just because of one overpowered skill. I'll make sure to clear this dungeon and shut him up. I'll show him that experience is what really matters in battle. As they entered the middle boss room, a system message appeared. You have entered the room of the middle boss. The display showed the boss's information. Bloodthirsty demon orc. Daekyung instructed the party to prepare for battle. Despite the intimidating appearance of the demon orc, he remembered hearing that it wasn't too difficult to defeat. He ordered everyone to circle around and attack from the rear. A smirk crossed his face as he remembered Sanghyun's declaration about soloing the boss. Sorry, Sanghyun, but you won't even get the chance. Taking the lead, Daekyung and the team charged at the orc, but soon he found himself lying on the ground, dizzy and injured. Struggling to his feet, he asked in confusion what happened. Watching from afar, Sanghyun observed the chaos with a slightly worried smile. I was concerned when they all charged in like that. But this is exactly why we failed back then too. The brown-haired guy called out to Daekyung, asking what they should do. If they kept fighting, they would all die. Daekyung stared at the orc and remembered another high orc from before. Why are they all so strong? He cursed internally. Damn it. This is why I shouldn't following the advice I picked up from the market. Turning to Sanghyun, Daekyung addressed his team. There's no need to defeat the boss. Today, retreat for now. Sanghyun stood there smiling. His expression startled Daekyung. Beside him, the brown-haired man frowned and demanded, what the hell is wrong with you? Daekyung ignored him and ordered the team to retreat. Its peripheral vision is weak. We'll break through on its flank. The team obeyed. Everyone except Sanghyun. Daekyung turned back to him, his face contorted with fury. I warned you, he growled. Don't blame me if you die. Sanghyun, gripping his long sword tightly, smiled slightly and told them not to worry. Then the battle began. The demon orc and Sanghyun clashed. As the monster lunged, Sanghyun thought, if we're comparing stats alone, I could never win. But with all the experience I've gained, he launched an attack, and the others watching from a distance were stunned. The brown-haired guy muttered, did I hear that right? He flanked it. Sanghyun stood firm before the orc and muttered, I guess deflecting your attacks is the best I can do for now. Then he spotted it. The crimson stone hanging around the orc's neck. It's been a while. Crimson stone, he thought. The reason for his obsession was its synergy with his skill Demon Bash. Though the stun duration of Demon Bash was only 2 seconds, he had a theory. Using his Devour Artifact skill, which allowed him to combine effects from different items, he could potentially stack stun effects. If delay could be fused with Demon Bash, it might even result in infinite stun. Facing the orc, Sanghyun taunted it. What's wrong? Come at me. The orc responded with an immediate furious charge. Sanghyun grinned. Perfect. He struck the orc, targeting a weak point, and activated Demon Bash. The orc froze. System message. The demon orc will be stunned for 2 seconds. Daekyung, watching from afar, was stunned. That skill. It works on middle bosses. That's broken. Sanghyun smirked. I knew orcs were simple, but you're supposed to be a demon orc. But the moment passed. The orc shook off the stun and launched a powerful kick. Sanghyun barely blocked it with his sword and was thrown backward. I forgot about that, he realized. System message. The demon orc's self-regeneration ability has lifted the stun effects early. Sanghyun grimaced. It'll take another 15 seconds to use Demon Bash again. This is exactly why I need delay. If he couldn't stun it, then he would have to defeat it directly. The orc rushed at him. Sanghyun deflected its strike into the ground. From a distance, Daekyung's team watched the brutal fight. The brown-haired guy urged, leader, we need to leave. His skill isn't even working. Daekyung remained silent. His stun skill failed. There's a huge stat gap between them. So how? He stared at Sanghyun's face. How can he still look like that? Is he really just a newbie? Sanghyun growled through gritted teeth. I've experienced situations like this before. He focused his gaze on the orc. If I'm too weak to overpower it, I just need to channel everything into one precise strike, abandoning all thoughts of slicing through. He used the orc's own strength against it. He drove his sword straight into the monster's chest. System message. Congratulations. You have defeated the middle boss Demon Orc. Level up. You have obtained the E-rank title Demon Hunter. Effect. When facing middle bosses or above, your health regeneration increases 5-fold. Sanghyun smiled. That makes 2 titles. I guess this is the advantage of being a solo player. Daekyung and the others stared in complete disbelief. To avoid unwanted attention or suspicions, Sanghyun decided to act. I almost died, he groaned. What would I have done if our leader hadn't dealt damage? The brown-haired guy looked at him with narrowed eyes. When did you ever deal damage to that thing? Daekyung, still shocked, asked quietly. Who are you? Sanghyun glanced back at him with a calm gaze. You're not that stupid, are you? I'll give you a chance to preserve your pride. Daekyung's gaze shifted to the crimson stone resting on the orc's neck. He understood Sanghyun's silent message. Just keep your promise. He turned to the others. Everyone pay attention. Now that we've defeated the middle boss, it's time to prepare for the final one. As they moved toward the boss room, the others couldn't hide their jealousy toward Sanghyun's stun skill. Sanghyun reached out and took the crimson stone. Activating Devour Artifacts, he looked at its details. Crimson stone. Grade silver artifact. Special effect delay. Effects plus 10 health plus 10. Strength. A rare item obtained only by defeating a demon orc. A crystallization of strength, tenacity, and endurance. Sanghyun slipped into unconsciousness once again. This time he found himself seated before a master chef's bibimbap served with slices of glistening meat jelly. His face lit up with joy. It felt like everything was finally going his way. He looked at the dish and thought, I can't resist a classic combination like this. Just then a system message appeared, you are ready to absorb the crimson stone. As he started eating, another message followed, absorption of crimson stone in progress per the 20% base stat absorption rate of silver rank. Your strength and health stats increase by +2. Then another system alert appeared. You have gained the special effect delay. You can now add the effect of delay to your skills. Sanghyun's expression turned uneasy as he read it. Why is this making me nervous, he wondered. He chose to bind the effect to Demon Bash. The system responded. The effect of delay has been added to Demon Bash. A new set of stats followed if you use Demon Bash. Before the first stun state ends, it will guarantee an extension into a second stun state. The third has a 90% chance to extend, the fourth has a 60% chance, and the fifth consecutive use has a 30% chance to continue the stun. He came back to consciousness and realized he now had a guaranteed 4-second stun. He was amazed. I only guessed it was possible in theory, but it actually works. Daekyung, who had been standing nearby, called out to him, asking if they could talk. When Sanghyun asked what it was, Daekyung explained that the final boss room lay directly ahead. It was the Orc Berserker. Sanghyun asked if Daekyung wanted him to join later, but Daekyung denied it with a slight smile. He told him that he'd be a failure of a leader if he didn't utilize a member like him. Extending a hand, he added that they should work together. Sanghyun took his hand and replied that his conditions were still the same. Daekyung agreed without hesitation. Just then a brown-haired teammate stepped in and told Daekyung that they were ready to enter. Daekyung turned to the group. Let's get going. Everyone stay on your guard. The brown-haired man grew visibly frustrated at the sight of Sanghyun. Sanghyun noticed his glare, but said nothing. As Daekyung led the team toward the final boss room, he called out to everyone, saying, "This is the final stretch. Let's grab some drinks afterward." Sanghyun observed the brown-haired man again. He just glared at me, right? The scene shifted to dungeon number 85, final boss room. A system message appeared. Final boss Orc Berserker. As they stepped inside, Daekyung turned to Sanghyun. "I'll go in first," he said, but Sanghyun stepped forward with his longsword and told Daekyung to just stick with him. Everyone, including Daekyung, was surprised. Sanghyun sighed. Internally, Orc Berserkers actually have lower skill resistance than demon orcs. Stunning them should be easier if I keep calm. He rushed into attack. I shouldn't have a problem. The Orc Berserker charged at him. As their weapons clashed, Sanghyun recalled his earlier words, "Stick with me." Have I ever said something so confident before? He thought back to his younger self, always scared. Even as an adult, he had only struggled to survive. But now I can't live the same life again, he told himself. Yeah, I need to change my weak past and my future. To do that, I need to show everyone here. Daekyung, watching from behind, was shocked. What a monster. Sanghyun slashed the orc's arm and followed up with Demon Bash. The orc will be stunned for 4 seconds, he shouted. System message: Demon Bash level 1 activated. The entire team rushed in. Blades sliced into the orc's flesh. Moments later, a new message appeared. Congratulations, you have defeated the final boss, Orc Berserker. Congratulations, you have cleared the dungeon altar of the Crimson Orc. As the boss collapsed, Daekyung looked at it and commented to his teammate that the dungeon had felt surprisingly easy. His teammate agreed. See how easy that stun made things. Others began whispering as they looked at Sanghyun. Do you think he has a personal porter yet? One asked. I was planning to ask him first, another replied. They began to argue. Sanghyun, listening, quietly smirked. I'm not even thinking of doing shit for them. Another system alert popped up. Level up, you have obtained the Drank title status, effect duration plus 10%. Sanghyun smirked again. A real harvest of titles. I never got titles in my previous life. His expression turned serious. Still, this is nothing compared to that man, Du Gyungsu, also known as Ghostblade, the title collector, the complete sword, Korea's strongest swordsman, and a monster who reached level 500 just 2 years after the age of players began. Before I regressed, I just admired him from afar. Determined, Sanghyun thought, but now there's no saying I want catch up. If I step on the gas from now on, I might have a chance. Daekyung called out to him, what are you doing? Sanghyun slightly awkward replied that he was stretching. Anyway, great work, Daekyung said, handing him an artifact. Surprised, Sanghyun asked what brought this on. Daekyung grinned. You really carried us. Besides, it's just bronze rank. I can't afford to be generous. Sanghyun responded with a chuckle. Aren't you being a little too honest? Daekyung laughed. I wouldn't have given it to you if it was expensive. But internally, Daekyung thought, I'm giving this to you because we won't be seeing each other again anyway. It hurts, but I have to admit it, you're already living in a different world from us. Sanghyun accepted the artifact. Meanwhile, the brown-haired man looked on with contempt. He's taking more care of that bastard just because he showed off a couple of times. Isn't this too fucking unfair? He made a call to someone. Scene shift: Sanghyun's house, Songpa district. Sanghyun looked elated. This is why I'm a player, he thought. Porters only make about $200 a day. He checked his account. 6 million won had been deposited. Daek gave me more than double what the others got, and a bonus on top. He checked the system info on the artifact. Daek had given him Berserker Ring. Rank Bronze Special Effect Lighten. Effect Strength plus 10. Description: a ring that draws out the blood rage of the wearer. Effect description: spend 1 mana per second to reduce the weight felt from all equipped artifacts to 1 gram. Even if it's bronze rank, to think ID get an artifact with Lighten 4. Free. He remembered his past where he had only discovered his ability after 50 years. But because of that had studied it obsessively, he recalled devouring an artifact that required mana in his previous life. The result had shocked him. While those artifacts took a penalty, they lost their mana cost after being absorbed. Back in the present, he began devouring the ring. System message: mana synchronization with Berserker Ring initiated. Grinning wide, he thought, who cares if there's a penalty, the more skills the better. Scene shift: Private Club H Gangnam District Seoul. The same brown-haired guy was speaking loudly. I'm not lying, that bastard really had a 4-second stun. A man across from him frowned. Why are you raising your voice? The brown-haired man apologized quickly. A fat guy nearby sipped his drink and asked, so what, you want me to get revenge? Another man with a scar over his eye sat silently nearby. The brown-haired guy replied that the target must be loaded. The fat man snapped at him, so what the fuck do you want me to do, retard? They continued arguing, but then suddenly the scarred man sliced off the brown-haired guy's ear. Laughing, he asked, the hell do you think you are? He poured his drink over the bleeding ear, causing the brown-haired man to scream in agony. If you want our help, the scarred man said coldly, you'd better pay the price. With a menacing glare, he added, he'll listen just as much as your ear is worth. Now where the hell is that bastard?